Okay, so today we're going to be making the Chellow Dene Plant Hanger. When you've finished making that, it should look something like this. So we're going to be creating this wrap knot that goes all the way around the top. We'll then move on to this diamond pattern. So you can see we've got a full diamond at the top, 2 half diamonds, and then below it we've got another full diamond. Once we've done them, we'll move on to creating the basket of the plant hanger. This is where you'll be sitting your plant pot. So to start your plant hanger, you should have 8 lengths of 3.5 metre cord. So you're going to take those cords and fold them in half, and you should have an equal length hanging down each side of your hook. We're now going to tie the wrap knot. That's going to cover this area at the top here. So we want our wrap knot to be around 14 centimetres if you held it out flat. That means that we need to start it around 7 centimetres down on this side to around 7 centimetres on this side. To start your wrap knot, you're going to take your piece of 2 metre cord, you're going to lay that over the top of the others so that it hangs around 7 centimetres down and then a little bit extra. Grab just that side to secure it, and then around 7 centimetres on the other side, create a loop and bring the long end back over the top of everything. So you should now have a long piece, a short piece, and a loop on the other side. Now you're going to want to take everything off the hook, make sure that you keep it all held in place so that nothing shifts around. So now while you're holding that, you want to move your hands just down a little bit without shifting it towards the end of the short cord. The wrap knot is going to start just below the end of this cord. So you start by taking the long end, holding everything secure, wrap that over the top of everything and around behind all of them. Now holding everything in place, you want to keep wrapping that cord around. So we want to keep wrapping that around until you have around 40 wraps. You can count them because they look like little steps. So you should have 40 little steps going down, and that should bring you somewhere close to the end of this loop. Okay, so once you've wrapped that cord around 40 times, you should now be left with a short piece on the same side as your loop. So you're going to thread that short piece through this loop, and then holding that in place, we're going to go to the other side, find the short piece that you left spare here, you're going to give that a good tug and you should see that that loop disappears up inside the wrap. If you tug that, you will reach a point where it doesn't really tug anymore, and that's where you want to stop tugging. Okay, so we can hang that back on the hook, and you should just have 2 little tufty pieces that come out of each end. What we're going to do is just chop them off as close as you can get without cutting anything else. Now if you want, you can take the end of your scissors or a needle, and if you can see the tufty bits, you can just push them up inside the wrap. That just tidies everything up a little bit. So we're now going to move on, and we're going to start creating this diamond pattern. So to do that, you're going to measure from each end of the wrap, so they should be nice and level. We're going to leave a gap of 10 centimetres, so that's around there. Okay, so you're going to take 2 cords from this group and 2 cords from this group, And you want to try and take these from in the centre. We don't want to be taking them from the outside and pulling them across everything. And then you're going to leave your gap of around 10 centimetres and we're going to tie our first square knot. So to tie your square knot, you're going to take the two that are in the centre and we're going to tie the knot around them. So you'll take the cord on the left and form a loop that comes over the top of everything else. You'll then take the one on the right and that's going to go behind, and then it's going to come up behind everything and through the loop you created with the left one. So then you'll pull that nice and tight, and we can just make sure and double check at this point that we are 10 centimetres. So that's pretty perfect. To complete your square knot, you're going to repeat that step, but we're going to start on the right. So you'll make a loop on the right. We'll take the left side this time, and that's going to go behind everything and then up and through that loop. Okay, so if we pull that nice and tight now, that's our first square knot. Now that we've tied our first square knot, we're going to take another 2 cords from this side, again trying to get the ones from the centre rather than pulling something all the way across. And we're going to tie another square knot, adding in these 2 cords. So this time, these 2 are going to be our centre cords. We're going to tie the loop on the left with our new cord, and then we're going to take the most left cord from this one, and that's going to come up behind and through to tie that. Pull that nice and tight, but we want to make sure we're not pulling anything off centre. So you can see if we pull this too tight, we start to go wonky. We don't want to do that. So just as nice and tight as you can get it without pulling anything out of place. Then complete that square knot by making your loop on the right and coming up behind and through that loop. Okay, now we want to tie a second one. Because we're making a diamond, we're going to be adding a square knot to each row. So we're going to take 2 cords from this side next, and we're going to tie a second one using these 2 cords here and these 2 cords here. So again, we start the square knot by making the loop on the left, and then we come up behind, pull that nice and tight, and then we make the loop on the right, come up behind with the left and through that loop. Okay, so you can see that we're starting to make sort of the top of the diamond. It's looking a bit like a triangle. So again, we're going to take another 2 cords from the left, and we're going to take the next 2 cords along, and we're going to tie a square knot. Then we're going to use the next 4 cords to tie another square knot. And then finally, adding in another 2 cords on this side, we tie the 3rd square knot for this row. Okay, now we've got one more row to do, so we'll add in the final 2 cords that we've got left on this side. We'll tie our first square knot, and then we're just going to work along until we get to the end where we'll add in these last 2 cords. So we should end up with 4 square knots on this row. Okay, so there we've created the top part of the diamond. As you can see, that's a triangle. We've got rows of 1 square knot, 2 square knots, 3 square knots, 4 square knots. And we've now added in all of these cords that we had coming out of the top. So to finish the diamond, we're essentially going to do that but in reverse. So this time, instead of adding in 2 cords on each side for every row, we're going to ignore an extra 2 cords each time. So first we're going to ignore these 2, and we'll tie our first square knot with the next 4 cords along. We'll continue this row, so remember we're going back down, decreasing the amount now. So this row will be 3 square knots, the next row will be 2 square knots, and the final row will be 1 square knot. Okay, so you should be left with 2 spare cords on each end from that row. We're now going to ignore another 2 cords on the next row. So you'll be starting, if you count in, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spare cords on this side. We're then going to tie the first square knot with the next ones along. And straight to the next 4 for the second square knot. And again, we've got 4 spare on this side. So to finish the diamond, we're just going to take the centre 4 cords to tie the next one. So you can find that these 2 are in the very centre, and we'll just take the ones to each side of it. If you'd rather count along, you should now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spare cords on each side. Okay, so there we've completed our full diamond. So for our next step, we're going to be creating these 2 half diamonds that we've got that appear to be going off each side. So to start this, we want to start on the very left with the first 4 cords, and we're going to leave a gap of around 2 centimetres. So that we want to tie the square knot about here. Okay, so we're essentially imagining that a diamond has been chopped. So our next one, we're going to ignore the first 2 cords, and we're going to tie with the next 4 along. And this is going to come just under the knot you've just tied. Okay, so if we imagine this is the first row, this is the second row. Now if it were a full diamond, these 2 would be in another square knot over here, but because we're doing half a diamond, we're just going to leave them blank for this row. Okay, so for the next row, we'll take the first 4 cords along again, we'll tie a square knot with those, and then because we want this to keep going down, you're going to take the next 4 cords along, and we'll tie another square knot with them. Okay, we're now going to bring this back inwards. So you're going to ignore these 2 cords that you've got coming out of this knot, and we're just going to tie our next knot with the next 4 along. If you want to count from the left, that's 2 spare cords, and then we tie the knot. And then to complete this half diamond, for the next row, we're going to use the first 4 cords on the left. Okay, we're now going to repeat that, but we're going to do that on the right hand side. So we'll take the first 4 cords on the right. Again, we're going to tie a square knot, and we want this to also be around 2 centimetres from your previous knot above it. Okay, so we'll just measure that. That's perfect. Okay, so now you've done that, you should see that your 2 top knots of your half diamonds are roughly in line with the bottom of your full diamond. So for the next one, we're going to do the next row down. So again, we ignore the first 2 cords on the end, and we take the next 4 cords along. And we're going to tie a square knot with these. And then for the next row, we're going to tie the first one with the first 4 cords along again. And then we're going to go for the next 4 along and tie another one next to it. So now we're going to bring this diamond back in. So we're going to ignore the 2 cords that have come out of this side. We're going to use the middle 4 cords here to tie our square knot. Okay, and then to finish off this half a diamond, we're going to go back to the first 4 cords along on the right and tie our final square knot. Okay, we're now going to tie the final full diamond that finishes off this piece. So to start this, we're going to take the middle 4 cords. If you want to count these, you should have 6 spare cords on the left, 6 spare cords on the right, and we're going to use these 4 middle ones. We're going to tie a square knot, and you want to measure this one and make sure that it's around 1 centimetre below these 2 knots here. So if we check that, that's around 1 centimetre, perfect. Okay, so as we did with the top diamond, we're just going to do an extra one on each row until we've used all the cords. So for each row, you'll be adding in an extra 2 cords on the left and 2 cords on the right. Okay, so now that we've brought in all of our cords again and we've got our 4 rows of square knots, we're going to turn this into a diamond. So again, we're just going to be ignoring 2 cords on the left, 2 cords on the right. And then for the row after that, we'll be ignoring another 2 cords on the left, another 2 cords on the right. Keep doing that as you did with your first one until you get down to your 1 single square knot on the bottom row. Okay, so now you should have completed your second full diamond. Okay, now that we've completed the diamonds pattern, we're going to create the basket that's going to hold your plant pot. So what we need to do to start this is to tie 4 square knots. They're not attached to each other, they're just coming straight down out of the last diamond. Okay, and we want the height of these to be around 20 centimetres from the bottom of the diamond. So we're going to start these square knots on the left. So you'll take your first 4 cords. We're then going to measure where our 20 centimetres is. And remember, that's 20 centimetres from the bottom of the diamond. So that's going to be around here. So we'll tie a square knot. Okay, we're now going to tie another square knot. You can move this one out of the way. And you need to make sure that none of these are crossing over each other. We want these nice and flat. We're going to take the next 4 cords along and we're going to tie a square knot with these. Now we want to make sure that this is perfectly in line with the one next to it. Okay, moving both of them out of the way, we want to take the next 4 cords along and we're going to tie another square knot with these. Again, we want this to be in line with the 2 that you've just created. Now we're going to take the final 4 cords and we're going to tie that 4th square knot with these. Okay, so to complete this basket effect, we need to add a second row of square knots. So as you can see here, we've got our first row, our second row, then pull everything together and it joins those together and we create a basket effect. So to do the first of those, you're going to take the two most left chords and the two most right chords. You're then going to almost fold those into each other so that the most right and the most left become the centre. And then the next one is going to be the knotting chord, and the next one on this side is going to be the knotting chord. So with these 4 chords, we're going to measure 12 centimetres below the last row. So that'll be about here. And we're going to tie a square knot at that level. Just going to tighten this up a little bit. Make sure everything's even. There we go. So you should see that that hangs down in the middle. And as we said, we've got the most outer chord from here coming into the centre, and the most outer chord from here also down into the centre. That makes it have this really nice curved round look. So to keep joining everything, you're going to take the next 2 chords along on the right, and then the next 2 around next to it. And if you hold these, you can check that you've got nothing crossing over. And then we're going to tie another square knot in line with the one that you just did. Okay, and then we're going to keep working around. It might be easier for you if you take your plant hanger off the hook and just flip it, so that we can now get to the back. So there's the 2 knots that we've just tied. So if you find this one, we're then going to take the next 2 chords along and the 2 that come next to it, and we're going to tie that 3rd square knot. Okay, and now we've got our final one left. So you should only have 4 chords that you've not joined together yet. Again, make sure that you've got nothing getting crisscrossed. We want them all nice and flat. And we're going to tie our 4th square knot. Okay, so now you can just check that you've got all of those at the same height, which I haven't. So this one has ended up a little bit too high. So instead of having to undo the whole knot, you can just pull it slightly, loosen that off, give everything a little tug from the top. And then when you've got that level, pull it nice and tight again. Okay, so to finish off your plant hanger, we're going to gather all of these chords together. We're going to leave a gap of around 6 centimetres below the last knots. So that's around there. And we're going to tie another wrap knot. Unlike the one we did right at the beginning, this is only going to have 6 wraps in it instead of the 40 that we did before. So you'll hold this in place with your thumb, create that loop. We're holding it in place at the 6 centimetre mark. Then we're going to take this and we'll wrap that round once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. You'll then find your loop again, and we're going to thread that piece through the loop. Hold that tight, and then we're going to get the top part, pull that so that your loop goes up inside the wrap. And then once again, your end pieces, we can just give those a trim. For the final step of your plant hanger, you should have out the bottom of your wrap knot some excess cord. Now it's up to you whether you want to leave that quite long and have it nice and dangly, or you can cut it quite short. It's totally up to you at this point. So I'm going to cut mine around here. Now that you've finished your plant hanger, I turned mine around to show you that demonstration, so we'll just turn that back to the front. You should now be able to take your plant, open up that basket area, and you should find that that just sits nice in there like that. So depending on the size of your plant pot will depend how high these square knots come up. If you do find that you would like these to be a little higher but you're set on the size of your plant pot, you can take this back out. And if you just give this bottom wrap knot a bit of a tug, work that down the tail a little bit. That just gives you a little more room for your plant pot.